You're watching Rurouni K95's anime review on In This Corner of the World. Hi Ruronis, this is your pal Rurouni K95 here. Today's anime review, we get to cover an anime movie for today's anime review is In This Corner of the World. In This Corner of the World is a 2016 Japanese anime wartime drama film produced by MAPPA and co-written and directed by Sunao Katabuchi and featuring character designs by Hidenori Matsubara and music composed by Ko. The film is based on the manga of the same name and written and illustrated by Fumio Kano. It premiered on on November 12th, 2016. So let's review this anime movie. Let's begin. A young woman named Suzu who is innocent and loves drawing lives in a seaside town called Iba near Hiroshima. In 1943, 18-year-old Suzu, working for her grandmother's small family business of cultivating nori, edible seaweed, is told by her parents that an unknown young man has come to propose marriage to her. The young man, whose name is Shusaku, lives in Kure City, a large naval port city 15 miles away from Hiroshima City. As a Navy civilian, he remembers that he and Suzu had met for the first time during one of Suzu's childhood visits to the city. Suzu decides to marry him and moves to join Shusaku's family in Kure. As Suzu adjusts to her new life in Kure, the threat of the Pacific War slowly begins to encroach on the daily lives of the town's people. As food shortages become commonplace, the government implements food rationing, warning and evacuation preparations against U.S. air raids also begin. Suzu, as a young housewife in Tonarigumi, takes turns overseeing food distribution and attends training against air raids. Like other Japanese housewives, she makes women's trousers fit for emergency evacuation by cutting traditionally designed clothing, such as kimonos, into parts as officially allocated food becomes scarce. Suzu looks for a way to feed her family, picking edible plants and trying recommended recipes. Suzu, maintaining her cheerful character, makes efforts to improve the living conditions and prepare for the air raid bombing with her family and neighbors, what you see in this corner of the world. The family builds the air raid shelter in the garden. Her daily life is full of humorous and lovely episodes. The family house of Suzu and Shusaku is located on a hillside in the suburbs of Kure, with a view of the Japanese naval fleet in the harbor, including the largest battleships Yamato and Musashi. Suzu enjoys touching nature and viewing boats moving on the sea with her niece Harumi. One day, as Suzu draws pictures of floating warships, the military police accost her and comes closer to accusing her of espionage. In December 1944, a Navy sailor named Tetsu comes to visit Suzu. That was a childhood friend of hers, and he has been assigned to the Japanese cruiser Aoba, which is stationed in Kure. Understanding it might be Suzu's last chance to see Tetsu alive, Shusaku leaves them alone to talk without a chaperone. The next spring comes when Shusaku is drafted by the Navy and temporarily quartered with the troops in Otake City, 40 miles away from Kure. In 1940, the U.S. begins air raids on the Japanese mainland in Kure. U.S. naval airplanes heavily attack warships and its naval facilities. In July, areas of Kure are firebombed and most of the city burns. Like many other Japanese, Suzu is unable to avoid tragedy. In addition to the death of her brother Yoichi, Suzu lost her niece Harumi and her right hand, which she describes as an irreplaceable part of her body due to its dominance. Which, when it becomes a delay action bomb detonates very close to them. Keiko, Harumi's mother, blames Suzu for her daughter's death as she suffers from depression. Suzu debates returning to the relative safety of her hometown, Aba, in Hiroshima City in time for a local summer festival on August 6th, when she is unable to see a doctor. However, she decides to stay for an extra week, particularly in Kure. On that particular morning, Suzu's still at her marriage home in Kure and speaking with Keiko, who has forgiven her for Harumi's death and insists on Suzu choosing what to do for herself. Notices a bizarre life on an abrupt quake from a distance. Strangely, Hiroshima radio station of NHK, which is the Japanese Broadcast Corporation, goes off the air, and a towering rolling cloud rises ominously over the mountain from the direction of Hiroshima City. As soon Suzu learns what has occurred in Hiroshima City. A new devastated bomb has fallen on the town, killing countless citizens and destroying buildings in Hiroshima City. This particularly have in this corner of the world has probably these certain events on Hiroshima Nagasaki bombing, particularly, but as well as particularly on the events as Barefoot Gen as well, which is another anime movie that takes place in Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing settings as well, which is probably back in the 1940s in Japan during World War II. For a while, Suzu is unable to enter or get her information about her hometown. A few days later, in radio address, the Emperor of Japan announces the end of the war by declaring surrender to the Allied powers. Suzu, having faced countless setbacks and tragedies during the war and had grown accustomed to the single-minded focus of keeping the family alive, is forced to accept the reality of her losses and temporarily falls into despair. Soon the times begin to change rapidly. U.S. occupation forces are no longer the enemy, come to Kure and provide food for its citizens. Suzu visits her grandmother Ito's family house in Kusatsu, a rural town to the west of Hiroshima and out of the affected area, to see her sister Sumi, who took refuge from the deserted Hiroshima and is only survivor of the Suzu's family. Sumi informs Suzu of the fate of their parents. Their mother left to gather supplies for the festival the morning of August 6th and did not return, and is presumed to be one of the 70,000 people who were killed instantly by the initial blast and shockwave, while their father died in a few months later and falling ill and succumbing to possible radiation poisoning, which is probably not in a good way, which is particularly bad in this particular sudden death as well. Sumi herself has fallen seriously ill from the radiation left behind the fallout and shows signs of increased susceptibility to infection and fatigue. By this time, Shusaku, who returns from his naval service and meets with Suzu by the chance in a deserted area of Hiroshima and tells her that he has found a new job. They come across a little girl, a orphan struggling to survive in the ruins after losing her mother, and adopt her into their new home in Kure. Above all this, the little girl's mother, who had lost half of her right arm in the Hiroshima bombing, and seeing Suzu with a similar injury, the little girl is drawn to Suzu. When Suzu regains her passion for life slowly with the courage and affection of her friends and family as well. As the credits roll, their adopted daughter is shown growing up in the Hojo residence, sewing clothes with her own hands, aided by Suzu in the post-war Japan, as you noticed, if you will, which is probably after World War II has passed. And that's my review on the anime movie, particularly in this corner of the world. The film is set in the 1930s, 1940s in Hiroshima and Kure in Japan, roughly 10 years before and after the atomic bomb, but mainly in 1940 and 1945. In the film, nature and traditional culture in Japan are clearly described and contrasted with the cruel and irredeemable scenes brought by the war. Though it is a fictional account, the official guidebook of the film claims that the episodes and background of the story are based on the facts and real incidents of the lost townscape of the pre-war Hiroshima, damaged by the atomic bombing in Hiroshima, researched by the production staff as well. Yes, this is particularly happening on the same events as the 80s anime movie Barefoot Gen, which is another 80s anime movie that takes place during the war on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is probably during the Second World War as well. The project was announced in August 2012, and began crowdfunding in March 2015 to raise funds. The crowdfunding was a success with a Japanese record of 3,374 contributors and the 30 million yen raised, exceeding the 20 million yen goal. Another crowdfunding to send Katabuchi overseas for the promotion was started on November 22nd, 2016, and reached the goal of 10 million yen within 11 hours. Director Sanao Katabuchi tried to add accurate details to the backgrounds of the film, such as the one shot which took over 20 revisions to get right, using aerial photographs to estimate the size of shop and interviewing over 10 elderly residents. And yes, this is how they particularly made this film, which is adapted from the manga as well. The film is on its opening weekend on April on number 10th at the Japanese box office, debuting in 63 theaters across Japan, and grossed about a total of 47 million yen from 32,132 admissions. As of March 25th, 2017, the film has grossed a total over 2.5 billion from 1.9 million admissions as well, especially the 2.5 billion yen as well for the the box office, for the Japanese box office in the public eye for a particular anime movie like In This Corner of the World, how it tends to notice as well. So yes, In This Corner of the World won 40th Japan Academy Film Prize for Best Animated Film, the 90th Anima Junpo Best 10 Award for Best Japanese Film as the second ever animated film, and the Jury Award at the 41st Annecy International Animated Film Festival, and was nominated for the 45th Annie Award for Best Animated Feature Independent. Sanao Katabuchi won the award for the Minister of the Education, Culture, Sports, and Science Technology in the film category at the 67th Art Encouragement Prize at the 59th Blue Ribbon Award for Best Director as the first animated film director, and the 90th Kenma Junpo Best 10 Award for Best Japanese Film Director as the first animated film director. For this, how this anime movie's gotten a lot of how awards and nominations to this day as well. The 65th Kikuchi Kan Prize was awarded to the team of In This Corner of the World, including participants of the crowdfunding as well. Come to think of it, this is your typical anime movie, how it takes place on the events of Hiroshima bombing, which is probably during the war in World War II, particularly, because World War II was already underway in Japan, which is particularly in the pre-war, which is probably be on the takes place on the pre-war Hiroshima and the after-war on Hiroshima back in the 1940s, which is probably during World War II. So that's going to be it for my anime review on In This Corner of the World. You guys, thank you for watching, but before we go, here's my thoughts on this. When I first watched this, I really loved this movie because I noticed that this takes place during the war on Hiroshima, kind of like Barefoot Gen, particularly. If you like Barefoot Gen, you'll probably want to check out In This Corner of the World, I guess. Hope subscribe for content. My Anime Planet link in the description down below. You can share this video on your Twitter and Facebook if you have Twitter and Facebook account and all social media. Be sure to get this video a thumbs up by clicking on the like button on this video. Feel free to leave in the comments in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, RuRoniK95. Feel free to join my channel, especially if you're new to my channel. Hit the notifications bell button. Be sure to get notified as well. Keep it otaku for this anime review, because this is part of my anime recommendations if you love Barefoot Gen. I mean, if you like Barefoot Gen, you probably want to check out In This Corner of the World. If you haven't seen it, give In This Corner of the World a watch. And keep it otaku for this anime review. And I also got another anime review coming up next. What I got here for the next anime review, what I had in mind, what I have here. Stay tuned for my next anime review. I got a hybrid of Japanese animation with live-action anime movie for tomorrow's anime review on Twilight of the Cockroaches. Stay tuned for my next anime review on Twilight of the Cockroaches, because you won't want to miss another anime review with some Japanese animation and live-action.